Welcome to the Engineering Emotions and Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Wink. Here we are helping you live a life of less stress, more energy, and living more from the heart. Today, got a really fantastic guest, very excited. His name is Christian de la Huerta. He's got 30 years of experience as a sought-after spiritual teacher, personal transformation coach, and leading voice in the breathwork community. He's traveled the world offering inspiring and transformational retreats, combining psychological and spiritual teachings with lasting and life-changing effects. He's an award-winning, critically acclaimed author. He has spoken at numerous universities and conferences and on the TEDx stage. His new book, Awakening the Soulful Power, has been described by multiple Grammy Award-winning musical artist Gloria Estefan as a balm for the soul of anyone searching for truth and answers to life's difficult questions. So please welcome to the show, Christian.
Hey, Justin. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so I've been reading the book. It's I don't know, I've read a lot in the personal development / spiritual realm, and there's a lot that makes this book unique that I'm really enjoying. One of them is your use of metaphor and some of the visuals that you use to sort of like it's your model of the ego, and he's kind of you have a great picture of him. Did you draw that, or did you get someone to draw that?
No, I got an artist. It's in this world of ours, interconnected world. I think the artist was Venezuelan living in Madrid, and then some of the other illustrations. It was some guy. I think he was Colombian but living in Chile, something like that.
Yeah, that's the great thing is we're so interconnected and all over. But your model of the ego is like a four-armed golem-like character with all these various things that are metaphors for the aspects of our mind. And so just kind of really helps some of these things like, a double-edged sword and like a mirror, that sometimes we like to put into other people and not ourselves. And then I really like the map, map of the soulful hero's journey and all the pitfalls and areas which reminds me of the other thing I really like about your book and your style is that you incorporate so much of pop culture to tie in. You also reference a lot of classical literature as well, but like I was just I think this is almost just in like one chapter or maybe a couple where like there's Star Wars, there's Harry Potter, Beauty and the Beast, X-Men, Lord of the Rings, which your map reminds me the most of sort of that, Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And then Wonder Woman and Indiana Jones. And it's just, there's a lot for the logical mind that, has been steeped in our culture to hang our hat on. And then, because sometimes we think that like, oh, there's just not a lot of spirituality in the world. And that's in some ways not true. And you point these out through our pop culture, like, yeah, it's there. Just are we looking for it? So have you always been a pop culture fan, or what is sort of the inspiration, or is it a tool? It's really fascinating. I loved it.
It's more around the examples that I use, as you know, they're all around the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Which is intense. What I'm writing about is intense, and nothing short of heroic. Like to coast through life unconsciously at the effect of other people's, choices and behaviors and expectations and all the conditioning of society. Anybody can do that. To react, anybody can do that. To be stuck in victim mode and level of consciousness, anybody can do that. To have the courage, the willingness to go within, to face down our inner demons, to understand why we do the things we do, the patterns of behavior that sometimes self-defeating, self-sabotaging, to understand why we get stuck in these ruts of relationships that sometimes have us feeling like I've been in this movie before, just with a different actor. To be willing to do that work is hard work. It's nothing less than heroic, incredibly rewarding, because the reward for doing that is freedom and the ability to choose, what kind of lives and what kind of, to have relationships that actually have a chance at working, to have a sense of personal empowerment. And so that's why I tried to make it as light as possible and to use examples and stories that to me are inspiring. Maybe they won't be to everybody, not everybody will appreciate the superhero and the Star Wars and the Lord of the Rings metaphors, but to me, they speak to me, and they touch my soul, and they, the hero's journey has been around all of human history, ancient literature, and so much of it seeps into our films and our movies and our TV shows, that it's just kind of becoming more aware of what that is, and using those metaphors to mirror, to inform, to color our own process of evolution and transformation.
Yeah, it is helpful to sort of lighten it up, because it is heavy, and I know in my journey, and I hear a lot of other people go like, "Oh my gosh, do I have to do this? Like, can't it be over?" Because I feel like for me, it's been at least 15 years, and I'm sometimes like, "Can't I just be done? Can I be done?"
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's not, and it's just sort of, well, what's the alternative? It's just like you said, doing what everyone can do and being stuck in that. And once you start to like wake up and realize that like that's not working, it's so painful. The alternative is just that pain of stuck, of being sort of caged in a way.
Oh my God, there is no other choice. I just can't even imagine. And once we understand the ego and the self-made prison of that part of our mind, of our psyches, then we have the possibility of breaking free. I remember, I come out of the psychotherapy tradition. My dad was a psychiatrist. My degree's in psychology. I was on a track to get a Ph.D. And when I first learned about the ego from more from not Freud's model of personality, but more from Eastern teachings as a sense of self, sense of individual personality, and all its shenanigans and manipulations and reactivity and victim consciousness and projections and all the stuff that it does, is like, I thought, oh my God. Well, first I thought I didn't want to see that. I was like, one of those, like, I didn't want to see myself in that. And yet at the same time, I was like, wow, this is what I needed to know. This is what I needed to know to understand why I did the things I did. And yeah, sure, in the beginning, it's tough. And in the beginning, you got to wrestle that ego down. But it does get easier and it does align. And, these days, 30 years later, my ego hardly ever gets triggered, hardly ever. And when it does, 99 point something percent of the time, I can nip it at the bud, because I can see it coming. So I can take a pause and choose how I want to respond to a situation, rather than just that immediate automatic reaction that the ego does, because then we get caught in those cycles of react and regret. And then we go into that cycle of self-punishment for having said or done something that we regretted doing. And it's a vicious cycle, and it's work, yes, but it is so worthwhile.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In your book, you had a pretty good example of where you ended up getting triggered. It was you were on a trip, or a cruise with your mom. I think it was like Rio to Buenos Aires or something like that.
Yeah.
She wanted to buy a ring, and you guys didn't have enough cash, and you blurted out like, "Well, I have emergency money back at the room." And then she's like, "Yeah, let's go get it." And I don't think you probably told her this, but you were thinking like, "This is emergency. This is not an emergency." Like,
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's a story that I tell to illustrate projection.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and that is what, like, if we get nothing else from the book, if we understand that, it is so freeing, because the ego is so self-righteous and it is so judgmental, and it appoints itself a judge, a jury, and prosecutor. It knows exactly what the other person did that was wrong, and appoints itself as the one who delivers the punishment as well. And so once we understand that, if we want to use our relationships consciously to shine a light on those blind spots that we all have, it's like, get in relationship. Get a relationship, because we're so brilliant about finding each other's buttons and pressing them. And so a really, really safe bet is like, if you're in a relationship, and it could be any, it doesn't have to be romantic, intimate, it could be professional.
Friends. Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. It's a pretty safe bet. If it's there, it's here. And the more whatever they do gets our goat, the clearer it is that it's also here, that we're doing that in some other way. And it could be really subtle. It could be completely subtle way that we're doing it. But if it didn't bother us, the fact that it bothers us so much is what lets us know that it's something in us too, that they're mirroring. And that's one of those, when you were talking about those the multiple hands of the Hindu, of the golem, like the Hindu deity, and its weapons. That's one of the ways in which it uses a mirror. It shoves it in the other person's face. Like, you did this, you did that, you never do this, you never do that, you always do that. And if we're willing to just get off that self-righteous stance and ask ourselves the questions, like, how do I do that? Incredibly enlightening.
Yeah. Because I know for one, along that line, like one of my pet peeves is, or something that I could get in a fight with somebody about, is like being on time. Like, I am very, very, like, very punctual. And like, if someone's, late, habitually, I'll start seething, and I've gotten a lot better. And, but it's, when I look, it's like, oh, it's because I would never allow myself to ever be late. Why? Because like all sorts of drama and trauma growing up related to being on time, being late. And so it's like, oh, that's the judgment I have on myself. And it really isn't about the other person. And sort of now that I know that, I can catch it a little bit more quickly and, make a more conscious choice of like, okay, I give this some person some slack, or maybe there's something came up. And sometimes there's some people are just, they're in their own world. I'm like, well, this just relationship's not for me. It's just whatever. And
exactly.
I move along, but without any anger.
Exactly. Because there's so many ways to respond to that example, right? Like, when somebody else shows up late, it's like, great, I have an extra 20 minutes to catch up on email, to return the phone call, to glance through the online news. So why is it that we get so upset by that? And if we're willing to do the work, we'll realize that it isn't about the other person being late. And by the way, it doesn't excuse their lateness. That's a whole other conversation. But why is it that it bugs us so much that somebody gets late? Because I used to have that. As well. And it doesn't bug me anymore. And what we would probably find, if we're willing to do the work of like peeling the layers, is like, it would go something like this. Okay, well, if I get really honest and I zoom out a little bit, it's not just when so-and-so is late, it's when anybody's late. So it's not about so-and-so really. And if I zoom out a little bit more and widen my lens a little bit wider, it's not just lateness. It's like when somebody cuts me off in traffic, and somebody cuts me off in conversation, it's a very similar feeling, right? So what is that feeling? Because we're shoving that mirror in the other face, we're not focused on ourselves. We're focused on what they did or didn't do. So, but if we turn that mirror around and we focus it over here, it's like, wait, what am I really feeling, right? It's because it's underneath the anger and the self-righteousness, there's other stuff. And so what am I feeling? I'm feeling disrespected and feeling like they're valuing their time and their schedule more than mine. I'm feeling like not cared for. I'm feeling not loved, not appreciated, et cetera. Right? Somewhere in that family, that constellation. And if we get really honest and we look at the patterns in our lives, that's not the first time we ever felt that. We've started feeling that way, way, way before that. So it's our wound. It's our button that they're triggering in the present moment. And if we frame it as like, wow, here's an opportunity for me to heal that button so that it's healed once and for all and forever. Because as long as we don't, we're just gonna be in the power of other people, right? Giving our power away. All they have to do is figure out that we have a late button to show up late 20 minutes, and they got us, right? They got us going.
Yeah, we've given up the control. It's like,
exactly.
A lot of people, they're not doing this stuff consciously, but they have, they're playing out their subconscious, and there's could be a part of somebody that's like, oh, I love it when this person gets mad at me because now I know I matter. I'm important to this person, important enough that they're, yelling, getting upset, causing tantrums or whatever. Because I think one thing I recently heard is, some people think the opposite of love is hate, but it's really it's indifference. Like it's like, and I remember growing up in being in high school and things like that, and being very like a nerd, very shy, like, so I could really relate to sort of your story of like not wanting to stand out. And people think that like the worst thing is, in the movies, it's always the nerd getting picked on or dumped in the trash can. It's like, no, like, nobody even knew me. Like, go to the high school reunion, people are like, who are you? Like, that's worse than somebody, because at least, you kind of matter for someone to, say something negative or whatever.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, like, if once we're willing to do that work, it's like we realize that the original belief, like it's a misunderstanding, right? There's no truth to it. That's why it's such a worthwhile endeavor to engage in that process. And that's why these people in our lives who get our goat, if we frame it this way as opportunities, they become our greatest teachers. Because once we like really do that work and we realize that feeling of not being good enough or not feeling worthy or not feeling respected or whatever it is in our case, feeling like we're damaged goods or like we don't count or that we're not lovable, whatever. Once we dive into it, we realize that it was just a misunderstanding of a young mind that didn't know any better, right? Misheard something. Mm-hmm. Maybe one of our parents reacted and said something in a moment of overwhelm. Or maybe, our parents got divorced and we took that personally, like we made it about us without understanding that it had nothing to do about us. Like, who knows what was going on in their minds? Who knows what was going on in their relationship? But to those young minds, we take it on like, wow, so didn't daddy love us enough? Right. And it had nothing to do with us. And we've been living out of those misunderstandings our whole life. And they have been impacting all of our relationships. So that's why this heroic work is so worthwhile, because then we can handle what's at the core of that being late button, right? Which was really had nothing to do with being late. It was like with us feeling not respected or not valued or whatever that was in our case. And then once we heal it, then anybody can show up late and we're fine, right? And we can do whatever we want, right? We can still choose to say, you know what, I'm not going to have lunch with so-and-so because they always show up late and I value my time too much, right?
Yeah.
No stuff. We can make those kind of choices without getting activated.
Yeah, which is a total game changer, because then it took as long as you just said that statement, as opposed to the the anger, laden that, can ruin like an entire day of just like, I know in the past, it's like somebody's late. It's like, I could be having that thought of like, oh, I can't believe it for like an entire day. And well, when I was younger, it could be gone a whole week even or more. Like, it's almost embarrassing to think of how long I could carry a negative feeling back in the day before I started doing some of this stuff.
It's a human condition, Justin. It's like we've all been there. Like every single one of us has been there.
Yeah.
We've all done that.
So one of the themes that I really like in the book is about basically keeping your personal power, not giving it away. And one of the things that you bring up that I think is really important is to get clear about, well, what does power mean? Because it's, it really reminded me of money, because a lot of people go like, oh, I want to have more money. But it's like, well, what are your beliefs about money? And it's like, well, if you ultimately think that, money is evil, and if you have more money, you're going to be a bad person, doesn't matter all the financial stuff or all the affirmations if you don't cut to the root.
Right.
And you bring up that like the people, and you frame it as egoic power versus soulful power. And it's like, if you believe power is this egoic, that's all about self-serving, putting people into fear, being abusive, excluding people, then like, yeah, of course you're gonna want to give that away all day long. Most if you're listening to a show like this, you're not gonna want that. And you do a really good job of explaining like, no, here's power. Like, I don't know, it's just a really cool concept. What do you think?
Yeah, thanks. It's I think most of us have an ambivalent relationship with power. Like, we want it, we long for it, but deep down inside, we're afraid of it, and we're afraid that we might get rejected if we really step into our power. That other people wouldn't like us or be willing to be with us, or we fear that we might abuse it and cause harm. And no wonder. All we got to do is turn on the news on any given date and witness at least one abuse of power. And then we have been conditioned to believe that power is a bad thing, like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. What they forgot to tell us about that quote, though, is that Lord Acton was speaking specifically about political power, not interpersonal, not human power. And so add to that, which connects to your podcast and to your mission and the amazing work that you're doing, is like we've been conditioned to believe that the emotions are weakness, that the emotions are less than reason, that and especially as men, right? Like little boys don't cry. Since we were little kids, we've been conditioned because only little girls do that, and that's a whole other conversation. Like, who decided that feminine is weakness? Because if you want to talk power, let's talk about the power of creation that resides in the female body.
Oh yeah.
But that's a whole other conversation. So when you could put all that into the mix, what happens is that we end up settling. We end up playing small. We end up like diminishing our power and acting as if we were something less than. And the saddest, most lame part of it all is that we do it for an illusion of security. We do it for a false sense of acceptance, for morsels of pseudo love. And so the whole message of the book is that there is a way that we can step into our power that doesn't require that we push anybody down, that we step on them, that we put our knee to their neck, that we use fear or force or domination or manipulation in order for us to prop ourselves up and feel powerful. That there is a way that we can heal our relationship to power in a way that is a match, that is congruent with who we are.
Feeling overwhelmed by the daily grind? Imagine if you could pause, reset, and truly connect with a calmer, more fulfilled you. It's not just a dream, it's absolutely possible. Hi, I'm Justin, and I invite you to discover the life-changing techniques in my book, Engineered to Love. Right now, I'm offering a free chapter complete with guided audios that have already helped so many people find peace amidst the chaos. These aren't just any techniques. They're transformative practices designed to help you love yourself and engage deeply with the present moment without even having to close your eyes to the world around you. So join us at engineeredtolove.com/sample and access your free guided session. It's time to bust the busyness and embrace the joy, ease, and love in your everyday life. Don't wait. Start your journey to a more relaxed and recharged you today, because you deserve to live a life you love. Visit engineeredtolove.com/sample. See you there.
Yeah, it's very much in line with your ideas of it being more of a horizontal as opposed to a hierarchical way of being, of just, like, well, hey, I got something good, let me share, and which is really in line with how love works. And it's one of those that, we often think that, it's like it's like food or something, like, someone has to give it to me and then I have the love. But it's like, no, it's not like that. When you give the love out, you get to experience that, and the other person gets to experience that. It's amplifying. It's more so. And this soulful power is really one of those, like, it's healing and it's inclusive and really, really, I don't know, amazing way to frame power. And I know from my experience, I think a lot of people can relate that often you don't appreciate your personal power until you've gone so long after giving it away. And it's just, I know I definitely have a breaking point, but I think some people don't even have a breaking point. I don't know. Sometimes I talk to these, people that have been working for decades, and it's like, what are you working for? Like, I just till I have enough money to retire. And then what? Oh, well, once I retire, then I'll know. Well, when do you retire? When I have enough money. And it's just no power. Just
I think there's a price to pay, whether it has an immediate measurable effect or not. But just what used to be spiritual teaching, that everything is energy. Now we know from physics, from quantum physics, that it's true. Everything is energy. That means the body's energy, even though it might feel solid. That means the emotions are energy. And I love how you speak about emotion, which to me is energy in motion.
Absolutely.
Just when just because we suppress emotions, because of all the reasons that we're talking about, we're afraid of confrontation, we hate conflict, we've made them weakness, and all those reasons. So just because we stuff our feelings, because we stuff our power, and we say yes when inside it's really not okay with us. Inside is like one big no, but we say yes to appease the other person or for that illusion of peace. That stuff doesn't go away. It stays in the body. And what happens after years and decades of suppressing our emotions, we begin to walk around with layers upon layers upon layers of repressed emotional crap. And here we are trying to have a relationship in the present moment. And all of it is getting filtered. All of it is getting filtered, like through that example of being late, through our unhealed past traumas and our repressed emotions, a lifetime of repressed emotions. And that energy has to come out one way or another. So what happens is we suppress, and then the next unfortunate one comes by and it just rubs the wrong way, and bam, boom, explosion, like volcanic explosion, which then causes harm into our relationships, and sometimes irreparably. Or that energy is going to start seeping out in physical symptoms, and it's going to start showing up in heart attacks, cancer, stomach ulcers. So
yeah, and there's finally starting to be more and more research like showing the link between these repressed emotions and physical diseases. It's that so often just like, oh well, that's just genetics, or that's just environmental. It's like, well, no, the way your emotions and your way of being, has a big way of playing. Like one really great book on this is like When the Body Says No. I think the author's Dr. Mate is, goes through, and there's like one example of ALS, and people that like work in clinics where they diagnose, it's like the technicians, they just know by the person's demeanor, like, oh yeah, that person has ALS. They were the nicest person I've ever met. Like, it's unfortunate they have ALS. Like there ends up being certain ways of being that can be associated with certain, diseases that in the past it's just like, well, just bad luck. And it's like, no, like these things, they will kill you, they will harm you, and things like that. And I, in my own experience, because I went on leave from work a few months ago, and before I started talking to other people that had gone on leave, and just about every single one of them, it was because they went to the hospital first, and then they're like, I think I want to go on leave, and I'm like, I don't want to go to the hospital. I'm going to go on leave now for my depression and my body aches and pains. But before it gets to that point,
Wow, good for you. Good.
Yeah. So,
and and that's heroic, right? That's to be willing to look inside and ask the questions. Well, what am I feeling? Right? Like that's what I mean by heroism. Is like what does it mean to live a heroic life in the 21st century, where we don't have a horse hitched outside? Most of us don't, and the armors and the demons to slay, except the ones in our own heads.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be willing to take a pause, like you did, and to look inside and to ask the hard questions and to face ourselves, instead of running away and numbing out like we have done most of our lives, and like most of humanity is doing. And brilliant ways that we numb out, whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex or gaming or workaholism,
Netflix,
or exercise,
news, work. Yeah, there's
etc.
There's more and more every single day, it seems like, to numb out. It's really it's almost a full-time practice to avoid numbing ways, and as you kind of let go of these things and start to feel like, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this is what the world was. It really is eye-opening. And it was a tough thing, because it kind of related to what you're talking about, masculinity a little bit. It's like, well, that's not the masculine, manly thing to do. And I don't think that mindset anymore just affects men. Like that way of being is kind of placed on a lot of women, especially in like a corporate environment, or, more and more women are just like, oh, I gotta toss my balls there, or something like that. Like, so it's not a man-woman thing anymore. It's kind of like a toxic confusion of what it means to have masculine qualities that women can have as well,
and to be in power, right? What does that mean? Because that what you're just pointing to there is the patterns that we see of women assuming masculine, in quotes, because I think it's a limited and in some cases twisted definition of what it means to be a man. But the women that we often see in the workplace who assume these masculine, in quote, qualities because that's what power is associated with. And it's like the book is for everybody.
Oh yeah.
But as you know, it has a particular message for women, stemming from my belief that the empowerment of women is the single most important thing that needs to happen in the world. It's not to idealize women, it's not to put women up in a pedestal. Women, of course, are also capable of abusing power. It's because the world has been running so off balance, so off kilter for far too long. And when women are in 50% of power in this world, we're going to have a very different relationship to war and poverty and hunger and social justice and wealth distribution and how we treat the environment and all of it. So that's what inspires that messaging. And I also added a book for a chapter for men specifically, what it means to be a man. Because we've taken on this twisted definition of what it means to be a man. And so many of us walk around like, these robots, unfeeling, uncaring, just suppressing all of those emotions. And there's a price to pay for that. So no wonder the rate of suicide in this country for men, it's 4 times as high among men. And the fact that 70% of the suicides in the US are committed by middle-aged white men who are still the main holders of power in the world. So that tells us something. And longevity, the fact that women outlive men by 5 years in the US, by 7 years globally, it's like, lets us know that the system of power over hierarchical, toxic masculinity, whatever you want to call it, doesn't work for men either. So we've got to figure this out.
Yeah, I read those stats in your book, and I was just startled. I was like, oh my God. But I don't know. It like made sense because there's, in a way, it's sort of like, well, you're supposed to be getting all these benefits because you're the privileged class, and there's a little bit like, yeah, but I have to put on this show of how this privileged class is supposed to be. It's like it's like if I pretend that I get all the benefits, so I have to, I don't know, tamp down the emotions more. Or if I, am who I am and maybe I don't fall in line with that, then, then it's a painful thing to stand out when you haven't sort of like done the work that you're prescribing in the book, which is kind of one of my, looking back, over 30 years plus, going from a really, overly shy to sort of like where you are now, like leading retreats, TEDx, and, author. I'm sure there's some people that are like, there's no way Christian could ever do something like that. That, probably you went to school. Like I have people like that, well, or vice versa. There's people now that go like, I couldn't imagine you were a shy kid that was, hiding in the back. And it's like, no, but and then there's still like, I still feel relatively shy for what I would like to do. And I'm just curious what it's been like that journey. And do you feel like there's even more expansion on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I think there's always expansion. I think we never stop growing and evolving. Otherwise, how boring would it be? But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to conceive of that. I was so painfully shy as a teenager. I was okay one-on-one after a little bit. Mm-hmm. But if you introduce a third human, that's it, clammed up to the degree that I was a pretty good student. That I grew up in communist Cuba for the first 10 years of my life. So one of the benefits of that is that we had a TV, but there was nothing worth watching. So I grew up reading. Yeah. So reading was very natural for me. I developed this lifelong relationship with books. And so I was a good student. I had all A's in high school except for one B. And I didn't
what was it in? What was it in?
Oh my God. It was a self-guided advanced American history class on American government. That's what it was. But it was like, because it was self-guided, it didn't have the structure. So it was easy for me to slack. It was my senior year. But I know I didn't set out to do this intentionally, but I have no doubt, looking back on it, that it was subconscious sabotage, because there is no earthly way. There's no way that I could have gotten up in front of a room of hundreds and hundreds of people, an auditorium, and deliver the valedictorian speech. There's no way. I just wouldn't have been able to do it. So that was my way out. And I grieved it. It's like at some level I knew, because when after graduation, like my mom came over and hugged me, and I just started to cry. And I think that's what was going on, because I certainly wasn't crying about graduating from high school. I was really grateful to be getting out of high school. Yeah. But I think that's what I was grieving. And these days, it's like you said, I speak all over the world. I've spoken on the TEDx stage. I get paid to speak. Spoken at so many university campuses. And so I know that whatever we have allowed to hold us back, which is all, going back to the ego, it's all in the realm of the ego. It's all misperceptions. It's all fear-based. That I know that it can all be overcome and it all can be healed. My adolescence was one long depression with suicidal fantasies. These days, no matter what happens, no matter the details, no matter the circumstances of my life, a relationship works out or it doesn't. A project succeeds or it fails, right? Never, ever, ever do I question my sense of self, my self-worth, my self-love. That is established no matter what happens. And so I know if I was able to do that, if that happened in my case, I know that anybody can do it.
Yeah, it's an inspiring story of transformation. And I know that you've seen it in other people. And like you said, if you can do it, anybody, and you just got to take the steps, keep taking the steps. And your book is a fantastic guidebook through that. Any last words that you want to talk about before we wrap up today?
It just, I guess the message is to do it, right? To just do it. Yes, it's going to work. The way the book is designed, it's bite-sized small chapters, short chapters with practices at the end. So designed to apply the teachings to our lives so that it doesn't stay at the level of information. We've got way too much information. We've got information overload. The intention behind the practices at the end of each chapter is to apply and integrate the teachings so that what happens is transformation, not information. So the book walks you by the hand, both understanding what the ego is, so that we can break free from it, that self-made prison, and about how do we step into our own power in a way that is a match for who we are. So thank you, Justin. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for your courage of not only living your own journey and diving into your own journey of transformation, but sharing about it so openly and so humbly. And to me, that humility is one of the qualities that I look for in a teacher.
Thank you so much. Yeah, like it's just one of those, like you said, you gotta go the journey, and this is just part of my journey. So that I don't know where it's going to lead. I'm sure you didn't know that you would end up here, but it's compared to where we started out. Oh my gosh, so much better, so much more hopeful.
Oh my God.
Sometimes the important thing is to remember to look back every now and then and just remind yourself how far you come, because the continuous looking forward, be here now and then only glance in the future and a little back. So I know you also have, it looks like you're starting to get some retreats going. So I want to encourage people to go check out your website. It's soulfulpower.com. So that'll be in the show notes. And you can also go there to, get a link to Christian's book, Awakening the Soul of Power, which you can also find on Amazon. It's already got, a lot of amazing reviews. I'll be adding my review there soon.
Thank you.
And if you can, I think you can also get a sample chapter of the book on Christian's website, soulfulpower.com. And he's got a meditation on trust and also some power practices. So you can kind of start the work while you're waiting for your paperback copy to hit your mailbox, or if you can't wait 30 seconds for the Kindle version to load on your smartphone. So yeah, thanks so much, Christian. I really appreciate it. And yeah, remember to find the Emotions Energy podcast, subscribe, and rate me if you have any questions. podcast@justinwink.com. Find me on social media. And thanks so much, and good day.